Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Lynne. Today I'm thrilled to have my longtime friend Ella Hooper on the podcast. Welcome, Ella.
Oh, it's good to be back, and I've missed you. It's been a minute.
Oh, me too. I'm just trying to think right now. We met in 2017.
I think so, yeah.
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 And you've been on the podcast in the past, but I had to have you back because so much has changed. And I know that your message is only increasing in value for our artists. But you were at a church that I went to visit for a leadership conference, and you guys had a booth specially for artists and like being wholehearted and emotional healing and spiritual healing and all of this stuff. And I walked up to your booth, and it was either like my crippling perfectionism or it was my jet lag, but I like sobbed on your shoulder for 30 minutes and told you my whole story, and you just looked at me. You were like, this is just beautiful look of like compassion, but also like, are you okay, girl? You know, you were like, you need to get shame out of your life. And I was like, I don't know what that means. And then we started this
Mm,
coaching relationship for I think 3 to 4 years on and off. It
yeah.
was really regular in the beginning. And I credit you all the time for helping me overcome so many limiting beliefs around perfectionism, shame, emotional healing, um, learning to trust what's inside, take action, being wholehearted. So I wanted to have you on today to introduce you because we've grown a lot since we've had you, and also to hear about your new life in Australia.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, yes, thanks for having me. I know we met it's crazy how long, especially because 'cause I've moved back to Australia after 10 years living in America, and for all the listeners, I actually helped pioneer an art school, so we had a Bachelor of Arts, acting, dance, music theater, screenwriting, filmmaking, and yes, I did a lot of work with artists, and I think that was such a impactful moment for me because I it was when you're I feel like what we were starting was like, oh, this is something that hasn't necessarily been built before, and so when I met you and you're like, oh, whatever you're sharing is resonating, it's always super encouraging and a sign to kind of keep going. So that first meeting was very special for me too. So,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, and we started 2020 in 2020, we started TFA, and so I remember we had a
yes.
lot to talk about in common of pioneering, because we started TFA completely from scratch. We didn't have a model that we were following. We were just kind of looking for where we could bring value and what people needed and what artists need and what artists are talking about, what they're not talking about, and these hard things that we didn't learn in school. But there was so much around like resilience and overcoming rejection and those kind of topics that you and I would talk about in our sessions that I could then bring into TFA content. So yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I would love for you to just give a quick intro for everybody who doesn't know you yet.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I helped start a university in Northern California. And I could really see, I had kind of, when we were sort of vision casting for the school, we really wanted it to be like around you performing from identity, not for it. So or what would it look like for you to create from a place of abundance, really, like versus lack? Like a lot of us are looking for, yeah, finding our missing piece. Like if I'm on stage and the crowd are like cheering for me, then I'll finally feel significant. It's a lot of like, once I achieve X, Y, and Z, then I'll feel um, this feeling of wholeness and that sort of thing. And so when we were building out the curriculum for the school, I was like, I would love to teach a class called the Wholehearted Artist on
Mm.
like actually like how do you as you because our students and probably your listeners who've done an arts conservatory, you're getting up over and over again and being messy and clunky in front of people. And that's really hard if you struggle with perfectionism. So how do you take care of your soul, like in that? And so the class, like originally, our leaders are like, we don't even have room in the curriculum to add another class. But then I think it got to like week 2 or 3, and all our students are like spiraling, and it was like so messy. Like everyone's like not okay because they're just taking all these risks, and it was messy because it was pioneering, so the school wasn't super structured, so that
Mm.
created chaos as well for the students, And so the Wholehearted Artist was really birthed from like, let's find language for our experience, because when we find language for our internal experience, it feels less scary. So that's kind of where the Wholehearted Artist came from. And then from there, I just, well, I had trained to be a life coach. And so I was seeing clients, and then more and more, because working with artists, I began coaching a lot of artists. And it's interesting, like people will come to me often because of like something where they're stuck in their creativity, but will often, because you're whole, you're not compartmentalized, like often we'll start talking about something else in your personal life, even though you might have come to me originally for something creative, if that makes sense. Because I think a huge part of what I do is like the whole person, not
Mhm.
just your arts world, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as
Mhm.
artists, it is all encompassing. So it's good to approach it with that lens of, I need to take care of all of me. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
artists are so trained to focus on just for us, music.
Yeah.
They will put aside physical needs. They'll, learn to ignore emotion, shove it down, ignore it, push past it. I think there's been a shift recently with all of the new kind of language coming through on social media, but
Yeah.
like gentleness and taking
Yes.
care of yourself and self-compassion. But what are some of the things, like, first of all, how do you describe wholeness? And
Mm.
then what were some of the things that you were teaching in the class?
Yeah. Great. Oh, great question. I could describe wholeness in so many ways, but I guess what comes to mind is when I always like to, when I studied coaching, not studied, well, started working with clients and started training in it, we really came from the perspective of like, view the person as already whole, because it just shifts your, like, rather than like, because I think a lot of the time we have someone in our life, and if we treat them as broken, they will be broken. But it's almost like when you view someone as whole and enough, they'll rise to that.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think it's wholeness is a starting place, but it's something that I ebb and flow in. I know for me, I have certain practices that I know when I feel distracted, I feel fragmented and I don't feel whole. But when I feel connected, that's when I feel whole. And so I think that connection is a huge piece to feeling whole. Like when you feel connected to yourself, when you feel connected to other people, and if you're, have a person of faith, when you feel connected to God, like that is what wholeness is. And wholeness is like nothing missing, nothing broken. And I
Mm.
know, because I work with so many people in like who have gone through trauma and very, very painful experiences, you do feel really broken in those moments. But I think there's moments and experiences of like feeling whole when you feel regulated, which is probably what we'll talk about today, which is like feeling really calm and present with yourself, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Um, but to your question of what did I teach in the class, like initially it was a lot of Brene Brown was, Dr. Brene Brown was like very, very like hot on the scene back 10 years ago. And so I really, because I moved countries and that was like a huge risk. And I remember feeling so much judgment and like criticism for like making this huge move.
Yeah.
And so a lot of I just had such a, I think about it now because it's almost like I can't even remember like feeling this way, which is huge growth. But I used to just obsess about what people thought of me. And
Mm.
so like I would just be so aware and hyper vigilant to like, is this person happy with me? Am I, like people pleasing? Like that was such a huge thing. And so when I started following my heart, I was like, this is the thing that's in my heart. It's not logical, but it's like so in my heart. And can I learn to trust myself with risks? Because I would outsource other people's opinions a lot. So a lot of the work that I started to doing, and because a huge thing that our students would come up against all the time is like, am I good enough? Like, does my, the dean of the school think I've got what it takes to be an artist? Like we're outsourcing so much. And so the course was really connected to like, how do you trust yourself and trust God and trust that there's a plan for your life and stay in your lane, deal with the critics, but also like find language for emotions. Like, because I think that's the biggest thing with artists. Like there's the people that like shove it down, and then there's the people that indulge in emotions. And so it's like, I think a huge piece was like finding language for like, what is the emotion that you're feeling and how do you move through those triggers? So it was kind of like the roadmap to understanding your soul as an artist, you know?
I
So
know
yeah.
Brene Brown has a book called The Atlas of the Heart, and I think it gives a lot
Mhm.
of language for these emotions. Talk to me more about navigating this line between indulging and shoving them down, and with that,
Mm,
the triggers that you're bringing up, because I know a lot of listeners are. I mean, I think anytime we go to pitch ourselves, a lot of us are talking about pitching right now, looking for other opportunities, working with bigger
yeah.
orchestras or chamber music ensembles or whatever. Am I good enough? I think that thought is always going to cross our mind at some point. I think it's just like a default. Like you're always like, do I belong here? Who am I? I hear this a
Mm,
lot from my coaching clients. Who am I to talk about this? Who am I to put myself out there? Right. So that's that voice of shame. And then with the triggers, I mean, I know so many people like they'll get on their phones, they see everybody else doing everything, and they're like, yeah, I could never do that. So they just kind of give
yeah.
up, which I think is a really
Yeah.
unfortunately unhealthy response to getting
Yeah.
triggered.
Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
triggered and then I just go to the gym.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
tell me what the
It's
healthy way
good.
is. Yeah, well, I don't know.
Well, there's so many ways, because I think it comes back to like, I always like when you talk about, oh, I feel comparison, like I could never do what Michelle does, or I could never do what so and so does. Like that's all noise. And
Mhm.
so often I think when we're triggered, we want to go into analysis, like we want to analyze, or meaning making. Like, so I feel a weird feeling, so that means I shouldn't do it. Like versus like, oh, I'm in something new, and so of course I'm going to feel weird. Of course I'm going to have that imposter syndrome pop up. Like, and so I think to the question of like shoving it down versus like overindulging, I think that understanding the nervous system has been a huge thing that has completely reframed my way of processing emotions, because I think I love Atlas of the Heart, and part of my second part two of the curriculum that I taught, the students had to read Atlas of the Heart, which
Okay.
was so fun. Like, especially working with screenwriters and artists, like anyone who has to write songs, anything to do with words, you must read Atlas of the Heart, because it's so brilliant. And it gives you, they say that like with emotional regulation and actually processing through your emotions, like if you accurately name the emotion, um, it'll actually diffuse the intensity of the emotion. So,
Right.
and then if you can actually articulate, most people you'll say like, how are you? And you'll be like, I'm fine. You're missing a moment of like receiving comfort or receiving like the care that you need in that moment. But if you go to like actually say, oh, I'm actually disappointed, then it's like, oh, I can actually go from there, and I can ask myself, did I have an expectation? Do I need to ask more questions of that person? Like, there's so much more when we actually hit the nail on the head of what the emotion is. But I think having like read Atlas of the Heart, it's so good. But now that I know so much about the nervous system, I think the nervous system is the place to start with emotions. So I used to think we have a belief that informs our thoughts, or we have an emotion, but then that triggers all the thoughts that we have. But really, how it works is your body has a sensation first, and then it goes into your emotions and your thoughts and the beliefs that you have made up about why you're triggered. And so a lot of like, it's kind of that thing, if someone texts you, hey, can we have a quick chat? And your body doesn't know that it's not someone else holding you at gunpoint, like, or like you interpret that as like a
I'm
quick
dead.
chat
Yeah.
means I'm dead.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
versus like
We're in trouble.
versus like all the other scenarios. So um a lot of like our emotions, I used to spend so much time articulating, and I could even like tell you and give you such great language around what was happening inside me, like a lot of people who've done some therapy or whatever, but I never knew how to actually connect to my body.
Mm.
And so now the way that I process emotions is more about what is the sensation that I'm feeling? Am I in fight, flight, fawn, or freeze? So, because the biggest thing about the nervous system is story follows state. So, the state of mind you're in will indicate the story that you make up. So, if you're in freeze, the story will be, I feel too overwhelmed, nothing's going to change, this is going to be this way for the rest of my life. But if
Mm.
you're in flight or fight, it's a lot of, are they mad at me? Like, especially like it's huge for artists, like scarcity. You're in flight a lot of like, I've got to churn out content, I've got to write that record, I should be practicing, and I'm not practicing. I really need to clean my room, so I'm going to go clean my room, but I should be practicing. And like, and that is going to be exhausting. And then, of course, your emotions are going to be all over the place because your body's so dysregulated. So I have learned to follow that like story follows state. I've learned to actually go, oh, I'm in flight right now. So I'm very hyper aware to all the threats around me, whether that's a bill coming in or a fight with a relative that is like awkward. Like all of those things feel like threats. So I need to actually like find calm in my body so that I can
Mm.
handle, or like not be interpreting these threats as life impending doom. Because
Mm.
that's what chronic burnout is. It's like everything becomes life impending doom, if that makes sense. So
Okay.
I don't know if
Tell
I fully answered your question, but
No, I mean, this is great. This is a lot. I mean, some of this I'm familiar with. I think this is the second time today I've heard this story follows state thing. I was reading Tim
Mhm.
Ferriss's book Tool of Titans this morning, and he was mentioning
Yeah.
that, and he says he journals that every morning. So
Yeah.
I'm interested that I've heard it twice today. So how do you know what state you're in, and how do you get yourself
Mhm.
to like normal state? If you can, I don't know if it's a
Yes.
brief. It's probably not a brief explanation, but just some thoughts around that.
Yeah, that's such a great question. I think because I've done a course on the nervous system where we had to track our states. Like,
Okay.
that's the only reason why I know how to personally track what state I'm in. And the course that I did just had such great language and real life examples. So if I start lawyering at someone and start getting really clear and start going like, this is, da, 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 I know I'm in fight. And the energy in my body is a lot of go energy.
Yeah.
Um, and so, so
I think
part of
I think I'm in fight a lot. Like, let's move people.
maybe
We're moving. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, well, what I loved about it because I would, so I go into a lot of flight or freeze.
Okay.
So I probably go into fight with my parents the most, and
Okay.
it's probably because like our parents can be the most triggering,
Yeah.
but I can get like that there, but it's really interesting. I think when you start to learn what sensations feel like in your body, that will start telling you what state you're in. So, part of the course was they actually identified like the feelings that you have in your body when you're in that state. So, when you're in flight, like I can feel like in my body, I want to crawl out of my skin. I'm bouncing around everywhere, or I feel like I've got a million tabs open in my mind.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of flight, or I want to run away, or I don't want to feel my feelings. I need to go watch this YouTube clip or scroll on Instagram. Like, so that's a lot of flight. And then freeze is like a heaviness and a numbness in your body. So that's like where yeah, just a freeze is like you feel this kind of, it's almost like a in your chest, and it's not like always in your chest, it could be in your shoulders. And so I think identifying like, oh, my body doesn't feel relaxed. Like
Mhm.
even right now I could do like a body scan. So I feel a little tightness in my chest. And it's actually normal because it's actually, it would make sense that I would feel a little tightness in my chest because like on and people are listening. And so I would be a little like, so if you're a performer, you might be in a little bit of flight energy or even fight energy because you have to go, like you have to get on stage. Like, and so I even have clients who are on stage a lot to like, rather than focusing in on like, do I know my lines or have I recited this well? Or like focus in on like breathing, like what's happening in your body. And then a huge thing for me was like learning what safety feels like in my body. So, like, feeling like, oh, when I'm calm, the story that follows is an openness, a curiosity, like compassion. I have like, okay, things are going to work out. Um, and so part of the course that we did is actually learning how to build your window of tolerance so that you actually cultivate more and more experiences of feeling calm, at peace, relaxed. And those feelings like we craving those feelings. That's why we have addictions. That's why we reach for the bottle of wine. That's like because we're wanting that relief. And so learning how to pay attention of like what healthy relief can be and learning how to like track more of that, um yeah, helps to kind of stabilize you and yeah, bring your emotions down as well.
This is already so insightful. I'm imagining different scenarios that I've had where it's like, oh, now I think I might understand a little bit what I was feeling in that
Yeah.
moment. So, being aware of your state of calm or
Mm.
groundedness,
Yeah.
do you like have specific exercises that you do? I know a lot of people
Mhm.
talk about like obviously the breathing box or just, yeah, movement or like what's worked for you.
Yeah. So I think like everyone and anyone who's new to regulation, you kind of go, we did a breath work in a counseling session one time. It didn't really work. Or we can kind of go, and I remember being in drama school myself because I trained to be an actress. We would do so many regulating exercises like breath work, body work. We would be moving around and like, feeling like all our toes on the floor to feel grounded and have neutral stance. And we would look doing all these exercises, but I had no idea how powerful they were.
Hmm.
And so regulation exercises, um my biggest lesson in regulation is you're not trying to feel 100% better. You're actually just trying to like, because it's about compounding. So breath work and meditation doesn't really work if you do it once here and there. Like you don't actually, because it's kind of like the nervous system, and you'll appreciate this as a musician, is your nervous system is like a song. And most of us are like, when a record keeps playing that broken record of like, ugh, like we can't move forward and feel the whole song through. And so a healthy nervous system is able to play the whole song through. So
Mm.
you're able to process the emotion fully through.
Mhm.
Um, and so when I do breath work and build that habit of breathing, whether it's breath work or even heel stomps, there's so many, you can like just YouTube, so many body regulation activities. um, when you initially do it, it's more about tracking, oh, I actually feel a lightness an openness in my chest, where I
Mm.
feel like I can breathe. And I'm noticing I feel at 1% a little bit less foggy headed. um, because if you like, I think because when we're in a level 100 pain, we want to feel what's the thing that's going to be 100, make me 100% better. But a lot of
Mhm.
regulation is consistency and compounding. So
Mhm.
and it's interesting what I've learned with like, how you brush your teeth every day, like you need to brush it again at night. You need to brush it again. And it's kind of like you're starting over. Whereas like breath work is like it keeps compounding as you do it. It's not like, oh, I missed a day and now I'm going back to square one. But the more you do these exercises and become aware. That's why I get clients to track glimmers. So it might be like, oh, I'm noticing the swaying of the trees and the weather is really peaceful. But I'm noticing like I'm in a lot of like, I'm overthinking and I'm over here. So I'm actually going to like, it sounds woo woo, but like connect to the swaying of the trees and how steady that feels, and let my body absorb that a little bit more. And so the thing is, I had done so much like mindset work, but your body, if your body doesn't believe it's true, it won't take root, the new belief that you're
Mm,
trying to have.
mhm.
So a big thing is like, what does truth feel like in your body? And what does, yeah, like getting your, like showing your body a truth. Like we need to have those experiences versus like just telling ourselves that we're awesome. We've got what it takes. Like, I mean, that helps a little bit, but I think for it to take root, it needs to take root in our body. Yeah.
Wow.
So some people don't even know what it's like to feel calm. So I'd start by like, did you have a time in the day where you just felt neutral? You didn't feel bad, you didn't feel good, you just felt neutral, and like track that moment. Notice that
Mhm.
moment a little bit more.
I would love
Yeah.
for you to talk about glimmers. We start all of our calls with wins. We ask people to share wins.
Yeah.
And I've gotten some pushback more than once from people where they're just like, we don't get this. What is this? I've had people go into like career updates or like, I booked a concert. And I'm like, I just want to win to be something super small that, like what you said, the trees swaying, you feel calm because I want to train our minds to look for positivity in
Mm-hmm.
a world that's like so full of complaining, negativity, and like fear. Being a freelancer is like such a hard job to
Yeah.
have in the first place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so how do you describe glimmers? Like, what is the purpose of them for you and with your clients?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I used to think it was just like a cute Pinterest quote of like learning to be a little bit more grateful and have an attitude adjustment, that it's so nice that you can have a cup of tea and feel good about that. Like because a big thing on social media is romanticize your life.
Yes,
Um,
I believe in that. By
yeah,
the way,
which I believe in that too.
yeah, yeah.
100%,
Okay.
100%. Um, I think it's like, um, we are so tethered to our phone and so tethered to screens and that sort of thing. So that's, I think, and we miss so much. Like, and it's really interesting. Like Brene Brown shares this story of like this man who just chose not to feel too happy about anything or too sad about anything. Like he just lived his life like even keel, and because he didn't want to get his hopes up too much, because he would, he didn't want to be crushed. And then his wife died and the pain was just so excruciating, and he wished he had have taken note of like the annoying thing that she did when the screen door banged or whatever when she came home. Like he started to miss those little things.
Hmm.
And it's interesting, like on reflection of that, those are the things that, um it's almost like it's where your attention goes, that thing grows. And
Hmm.
so I think that we chase, like, even to your clients, of like, we want to celebrate the huge wins because they mean something about us.
Hmm.
And it's so identity focused, like, oh, I'm good now because I landed this gig.
It's
Whereas
also
like if
relief.
you're,
Like, at least I booked a
yeah,
concert. I'm like, just
and that,
something happened.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, which absolutely like needs to also be tracked.
yeah.
But I think, because it's to the point of compounding interest kind of thing. Like when you start, like I would have to 5 days a week track 5 glimmers in the day. So, and then track the body sensation. And because I've moved back to Australia, an example I could give is, I was going for a walk in the evening and I spontaneously ran into my sister, and because they live 5 minutes away, my sister and brother-in-law and their daughter.
Aw.
And she was little, and like it was a big deal for her to like know who I am because I'd been away for a long time. And she just squealed with excitement, like this joy of like, oh my gosh, we ran into Auntie Ella, and like this so much excitement. And because if I wasn't like wasn't doing the homework of tracking glimmers, I probably would have brushed past and thought, oh, she's so cute. but I wouldn't have actually like let it fully impact me.
Mm.
And when I could actually track like, oh, I felt like that good tingles, like, and joy around my face is smiling and I feel a little tender. And the thing is like, I'm not trying to assign big meanings to that moment. I'm not trying to say, well, that means my niece and I are going to have an amazing relationship. Like, I'm not trying to assign any meaning to it. I'm just letting myself be in the moment and present.
Mm.
And a big thing with glimmers, it's actually teaching you to come into the present. And I think we've probably, if you've done any emotional health, like you hear, oh, be present with something, be present with something. It's so hard to do that. And I also was like, what's the point? Like, what's the payoff to being present? And
Mm.
then I started learning about, because I had it's have had struggled so much with anxiety, and
Mm.
anxiety takes you completely out of the present. And then you realize, like, oh, this is like the antidote to anxiety, because the
Wow.
safest place, because the biggest thing about anxiety is you just don't feel safe. You just don't feel like you're okay. And so glimmers help you pull you into the moment. And so the more you do it, the more you'll feel present. And I think this is so important. Anyone who has to perform has to learn the art of being present, and
Yeah.
really should be learning how to track their glimmers, because it's like a sharpness to be able to like be in the moment. And I know even for actors, like I talk to actors, I'm like so proud of one of my actors recently who's a client. They were like, oh yeah, the other scene partner lost their lines. And I was able to like really be there and be present and pivot the way that we did the scene. And I'm like, look how online you were to be able to do that. Cause
Yeah.
sometimes we're so triggered, we actually can't have access creativity. So that's a huge, like, tracking glimmers will increase your creativity, because you'll be in your prefrontal cortex, which is
Mm.
where creativity and options, and yeah. So that is why you track your small wins, because it's like helping you like be more creative, basically, be in
Yeah.
more abundance.
I love that.
Yeah,
I totally resonate with anxiety pulls you out of the moment because you're worried about the past or you're worried about the future. So you're missing what's happening right now.
totally.
And I notice that when I know one of the big things I talked to you about over and over was practicing and like a healthy mindset when you practice. And I noticed yesterday that I was like ruminating about an argument I had with someone, and I just could not like. And I'm like, this is why I hate practicing because I'm actually just fighting with someone in my head and has nothing to do with practicing. So I went to my best friend ChatGPT, and it
Yes.
said, this is very insightful. It said, you finally stop because you're practicing, so you have no one to talk to, and then it leaves room for whatever's unprocessed in your brain. So if you
Yes.
don't process that emotion that you feel, and I don't want to process that emotion because I feel bad about the feelings I feel towards that relationship because I'm like,
Right.
maybe I'm wrong, maybe I overreacted, maybe I shouldn't be feeling like that, or that wasn't very kind of my inner thought, right? So there's like an avoidance there. So as long as I'm
Mm.
avoiding it and then I come into this practice session, well, now my brain has time to like yell at me about this. I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
This is very
Yeah.
interesting. So it was this
Yes.
idea of like take 5 minutes and offer a container of like non-judgment for this
Yeah.
anxious these emotions that you're not wanting to
Yeah.
face. And then after the 5 minutes, you put that away and you go practicing, which is a safe place for you. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay, thank you. I'm gonna try that. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And I think that, like, I mean, even that's such a great example that is so relatable of, yeah, like your mind racing. And so even,
It's loud. It's a heavy
very loud.
loud, like it's
And
so loud.
it's loud because there's what is happening with your friend, like the issue that's happening, but then there's also your criticism about yourself
Exactly. And that's what's
that is.
unbearable.
Yes, and that to me is when you're in fight or flight,
Mhm.
probably flight, because your flight is OCD looping, like you're
Mm.
looping about something. And so even for people who do find themselves in that, like sometimes it's like, oh, I need to actually, it's so there's with regulation, there's no right way to do it. It's all
Mhm.
experimental.
Mhm.
And because your nervous system is different to my nervous system. So what you need for soothing is very different to what I need. Um, so another example, like, so for you, and maybe is like, oh, I need to actually go journal before I practice. That might be a helpful thing to do. Like morning pages are really great. The Artist Way with
Yeah,
Julia Cameron.
I've got it beside me right now, yeah.
Yeah, they're helpful to kind of like stream of consciousness, but even like sometimes because I would obsess and loop about so much, I'll like I actually kind of went through a phase where I'm like, I'm just gonna say, Ella, you're OCD looping.
Mm,
And because I've learned we are gonna come back to this when I'm a bit more regulated. And it's
mhm,
kind of like having boundaries with yourself of like, right now we're OCD looping, and I will want to process this because sometimes even when you're so dysregulated, you're like, well, that's great. I know how bad I feel about the situation. Or I know how, like, this is my limiting mid belief, but I don't know how to shift it. And so some of it, you might need to go for a walk or do some VU breathing. And so when you're activated like that, you're just like not feeling safe. So even turning towards yourself, showing some compassion. The big thing about breath work, which I've done so much breath work and you would do so much as a singer, but I didn't realize that when you count out for 8 seconds, that's when if you count out for like breathe out for 8 seconds, that actually signals to your body that you're safe because you're not being chased. You wouldn't have time to, you know, breathe out for 8 seconds if you're being chased by a bear. And so it actually is another way, like the more you do breath work and are able to like, yeah, breathe out for 8 seconds, you'll be able to like calm that racing mind more quickly, if that makes
mm,
sense.
mhm,
So, but yeah, that's such a great example of like, I feel like it is like a battlefield to get people to practice because
mm.
of like sometimes we feel like, should I be analyzing? Like, why am I the way that I am? Why do I procrastinate? But it's only really productive to like analyze like when you're a bit more regulated because you're more of an observer of yourself than a critic of yourself, if that makes sense.
I really like this. I mean, well, what you said about telling yourself boundaries, you also name it. Like, this is what's happening. We're gonna come back
Yeah.
to it later, which is what Brené talks about in Atlas of the Heart. Like, we're gonna
Yeah.
name the emotions that you are seen and heard and validated, because that's actually what that voice wants, is to say, "Listen to me, I have something to say and it matters. Stop dismissing me." And then you're like, "We're gonna come back to you when I feel better," which is a really,
Yeah.
I think, healthy of dealing with that.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of I like this story state thing. A lot of our musicians will say that practicing consistently is a challenge because they've got lives that are exploding in a million directions, maybe
Yes.
partners or kids or multiple jobs,
Hmm.
admin, emails, Instagram, all that stuff. And then so there's no time to practice, but actually there is always 10 minutes here, 15 minutes here. Like we could, if we just didn't have this story that we tell ourselves when we sit down of, well, this is ridiculous that you're only having 10 minutes here, or,
Yeah.
you're so behind, or like this is way too hard, or you're never going to get this prepared on time, or like any of those negative stories that we tell ourselves. If we could eliminate those, then maybe we
Hmm.
could carve out these pockets of time and just
Yeah.
use them, utilize them, and then compounding, like you're saying this whole episode, the power of compounding.
Yes. And I think like any habit that we have is a journey of self-trust and it's a reparenting thing. It's like we have to parent like, and we're learning to be compassionate parents, not with ourselves, not critical ones that are like, you have to practice. But it's learning to be like, okay, you have 10 minutes to practice and set a timer. And that's really helpful. But I also think with habits, sometimes it depends on your personality. Like some personalities are quite good at being disciplined. But then some of my clients, I think it's helpful to reframe it into like, I'm going to make practicing a ritual, like and a cozy experience for myself. So if you're practicing the piano, maybe light a candle. I don't know, make it something that feels um, beautiful.
Welcoming, safe.
And I think
Yeah.
it's a good, yeah, it's like, because sometimes it's like, oh, I want to start journaling or I want to start meditating every day. Well, can you set up your space to make it cute and make it feel like a desirable thing to do? because sometimes, like, I feel like sometimes our habits just feel so boring and rigid, and like it's the romanticize your life. Like, actually, like, do something that feels like inspiring to do.
Right.
And then maybe you'll want to do it more because it feels like loving and giving towards yourself. Um, but yeah, I think that habits are an interesting one because I think that we're met with so many places where we've failed and like we haven't built trust with ourselves. And so that's when we go into like a dysregulated state, like flight, where we are like, yeah, like bouncing around, avoiding. But I think the more regulated story is like, hey, I'm learning, I'm in process, I'm growing trust with myself. I'm learning to fall in love with this. The other thing I would say is like learning how to come into the present moment. So, doing a scan of your room. So, often we can be so in our head, and it's
Yeah.
like, actually, the keys are right here, and my hands are quite warm. So, when I put my hands on the keys, that's actually quite cold, and that feels good. Or I'm feeling the support of the chair. Like, so doing things to try and be present with practicing, because then you're not obsessing about how you sound, like, have you done enough? You're actually just like feeling the keys on your hands. Like
Mm,
that's all you're doing, if that makes sense. So that
mhm.
would be another thought of like how you can feel regulated when you practice.
Can you touch briefly on what it means to build trust with yourself and like best practices to do that? Things you've seen that work
Yeah.
with your clients?
Yeah, I mean, something that I personally do is like write down and get honest with myself. It's kind of like if you went through a hard thing with a friend and you want to create repair or forgiveness, you kind of need to talk about what hurt you. So it's the same with yourself. Like, actually write down, I'm so disappointed that I didn't do this. Like, it feels very depressing because some people like they just can't because they have so much. I know this is a strong word, but so much self hatred. It's really too hard to even do this. So it may not be for everyone, but I would write down everything that I'm disappointed with myself. Like, I didn't eat really well, or I didn't reply to that person, or I'm feeling shame, and like all of those things. And then I would show myself compassion. Like, I'm so sorry. And it's actually a really helpful when we look at all the places we feel disappointment with ourselves, we can actually have more grace for other people as well because we're like, gee, we're all just learning how to build trust and we're all learning how to be consistent, you know? Because a lot of us didn't have consistency growing up. So, like, having compassion from that perspective, but then it can kind of like give you it hits a reset button of like, what expectations am I capable of? What are kind expectations of myself versus like often when we're in pain, we go, like, let's say you just, I don't know, using weight, for example, you're like, oh my gosh, I put on weight. I'm going to do this extreme thing and never eat bad food again. And then of course we're in a cycle of disappointment because we haven't been realistic in our expectation of ourselves. So I think that's like often where trust is broken is around expectation. And
Mm,
so it's important to have a healthy expectation on where you're at. And so I think that trust gets built when you are, yeah, learning how to, like, you break it down and make it small. So like you mentioned, like the 10-minute thing, like, oh, I can do 10 minutes. Or like for me, I'm like, may not do 10 minutes. I don't like rigid. I'm not very good with rigid. So I'm like, if I do 10 minutes 5 times this week, that's really great. Like
yeah.
and then people are like, you're so disciplined. I'm like, well, I'm actually really flexible with myself. And so I've learned myself. Like, that's a huge part of self trust. Like, actually learn yourself. Don't compare yourself to, I'm not a type A personality. So I'm like, I'm not going to compare myself to a type A personality, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah. That sounds like a lot of maturity and wisdom.
Yeah. But I think initially when you start to trust yourself, you'll be like, this isn't working. Like, because you want big results straight away, but it just is more like showing up for yourself, like trying to, yeah, be consistent with that. And then you'll see results. You'll be like, oh,
Mhm.
wow, I became this disciplined person. And yeah, because you're working with yourself, not against yourself.
I feel like there's so much more to unpack here, but I wanted to touch on one last thing that I saw on your
Yeah.
feed this week that like stopped me in my tracks. Because we talk about killing perfectionism all the time. It's a big theme around here. Perfectionism is a trauma response that comes from being shamed when you made a mistake. And I saw that and I was like, oh, because I know there are different types of perfectionism. You know, one's like it has to be perfect, it has to be clean, it has to be tidy. Like, and
Mhm.
I'm not that kind of
Yeah.
perfectionist. So I've always been like, oh, do I actually have it? I don't know. But then I understood it's like, oh, you were shamed when you made a mistake. And so you have this fear of, yeah, please explain what you shared in your post.
Yeah. And similar to you, like, I mean, I love a clean space, but I'm not, I don't freak out if um, someone comes over and my house isn't perfect. I get a little bit of like, ooh, I wish I had like, I wish it was kind of better or whatever, but I don't have like a visceral response. Like some people have like pretty intense responses around visually, if you're not looking visually aesthetic. Whereas I'm like, like kind of. But I think for me, everyone's has perfection show up differently. I didn't think I was a perfectionist, but when I got into leadership and leading people, and because I would hear over and over again how, oh, this person handled this so bad. And so I would internalize, like, make sure I never handle a situation bad or like impact someone. And so people pleasing and perfectionism are like sisters and they're part of the shame, they're functions of shame. So
Mm,
people pleasing is like,
interesting.
make sure everyone's, because they're very outside focused. Like, what do you think of me? Um, and yeah, so for perfectionism for me showed up, and I'll connect it to the trauma piece, is like if I didn't handle something relationally well. And so, or if I got triggered and reacted and someone saw me triggered, like because I'm usually pretty zen. And so if someone saw me triggered, I would be like, oh my gosh, I'm not allowed. And then it would go into like my experience doesn't, I don't matter. Like I have to be perfect to be loved. Like, and or I can't have any thoughts and feelings or be upset about anything. So I'll just shut my emotions down because yeah, like you become, yeah, like I felt I didn't even realize this because I'm a pretty authentic person, but I think when you really care and obsess about how people perceive something of you, you are going to naturally wear a mask. Like you're not going to
Mm,
be fully yourself. But I think the trauma piece for me is well, there's layers. There's like childhood trauma of like, did you grow up in a home where everything felt high stakes and like you're in trouble, a lot of punishment of like over a level 2 problem where you like really punish? Because that goes into our subconscious and like makes us believe like, I can't really be a learner about something. I have to get it right the first time because I'll get in trouble. Or we have moments in our past where we are blamed for something that wasn't our fault. And so that makes us hyper vigilant. And that's almost impossible. Like, where, and then I'll work with clients where they have a pattern of like, I'm actually innocent in this situation, but I'm being blamed. And it's like a cycle that follows them. And they're like, yeah, that is really wrong. You're being blamed constantly. And it's because of something that happened in their childhood. But then I think if you go, like I've gone through trauma in adult life. And so it's usually like things are happening too fast and it's so crazy. Like I've gone through things that I'm like, this is like a movie, this is crazy. And so then the shame is like, I wasn't even going to be capable to handle that because it was so nuts. It was so crazy. And so then you have all this shame, like, oh, I'm not handling this well because you're comparing yourself to like someone who's not going through something crazy, but you're like, oh, I shouldn't be going, why have I got all this drama around me? And like the shame around that. Um, and so I think part of like the antidote for that is learning to like really, like Brene Brown talks about, really own your story and have compassion over your story. And I mean, it's a bigger conversation, but we're really having to rewrite the narrative that you are a mistake, that you are wrong, or that you are bad, like deeper subconscious beliefs. And that has to shift through feeling safe in your body, or feeling like finding safe people. Maybe you're around, it could be a boundary thing. You're around just really critical people that are very punishing. And that might mean like you need to find some people that are actually really safe when you make a mistake. Or maybe it's in therapy, like you can actually be honest about something that you've done and not have them judge you, you know? So
Mm.
it's
Mhm.
like we need those experiences to help rewrite that belief system with perfection. Yeah.
There's so much to unpack here. I really appreciate you sharing on, I think, so many things today. If you had like
Mhm.
one kind of message to give artists of the world listening, do you know what you would share?
Oh, good question. Um, I I think especially if you're over 25 and you've been doing something creative for a while, you've probably hit some setbacks and some pain. Um, and like, I think like you got into creating because you loved it. Like you got into it because you're passionate about it. You might be obsessed with it. And that's so, there's so much joy in being an artist. Um, but I think that learning how to be regulated will be able give you access to that creativity again. Because I
Mm,
think what artistry becomes is about paying the bills. Am I good enough? Is that person going to see me? Am I going to be picked by that agent? Like it becomes a hustle. And I think the more you practice glimmers, you more actually set a time, like space in your schedule to have spaciousness and feel creative. Yeah, tracking your glimmers, feeling regulated, you're going to be able to access so much more creativity. And I think that like a huge thing in being an artist is like you want to be authentic and like have your own expression. And you really can't do that if you're dysregulated and you're looking at other people's content all the time. And like, so I think it's like learning how to cultivate some stillness and some calm, and then watch how it's almost like a tap gets turned on and all the ideas rush in and you'll feel creative again. So I think the big thing for any artist is really learning about their nervous system and learning about like how to dial down the threats so they feel safe and feel creative and like their true self. So yeah, that's what I would say.
amazing. Okay, and do you have any resources you recommend other than I'm just thinking of the TikTok videos that you don't know where they're sourcing their information from.
Yeah, that's such a good question. I did a course I think you can. It might be a subscription. It's called Reclaiming You, and it's by Justin and Abby Stumble. They have a nervous system course. It's probably the best. I mean, I've listened to a ton of podcasts on the nervous system, but actually doing an immersive course is really helpful.
Mhm,
Um, and then I'll have to think about it, but I definitely think there's actually a lot on YouTube.
mhm.
Like if you just start researching what are some body regulation activities, there's a lot sort of there.
Yeah.
I have kind of, because I've learned so much, I've actually built my own content, and I haven't got it out there fully, but I've actually made my own meditations and my own yeah, like, the different somatic things that I do, because you kind of need to learn from someone else, and then adapting it as your own is, like, is a huge thing. So,
Okay.
eventually I'll launch all those things, but for
Yeah, well,
now,
we'll have you back
yeah.
when you do because I think it's so
Yes.
necessary. Yeah.
Yes, I know. I do always recommend, like, for compassion, Andy Kobler is amazing. She wrote the book Try Softer. That would be because that talks about the nervous system. I
Okay.
would probably start with that book. So, yeah, even if you get it on audio, because she has a very calming, soothing voice. So, yeah, like she's really great to like listen to. That would be a good starting place because she talks about self compassion and the nervous system, which is really good. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well,
Yes.
this has been so great. Ella, how can people follow you and stay in touch?
Yes, so you can follow me on Instagram. My handle is Coaching with Ella. I'm actually going to be posting a lot more about different reactions we have in different states because sometimes it's helpful just to see a visual of like, oh, that's fight or that's flight. So yeah, you can definitely follow. I'm going to be posting a lot of information on all of the stuff we talked about today. So
I
yeah,
know your acting skills are coming in handy recently with your reels, so I'll be
yeah,
looking forward to that.
yes,
Yeah.
I'm embracing that.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much for such a beautiful conversation. And yeah, I
no,
look forward to connecting with you again soon.
thanks for having me.
You're welcome.